Joining us now, Deputy Press Secretary, Trump-Pence 2020, Perinne. Erin, great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be back on.
Erin, we're really fired up here in Trump world today, looking at these numbers and the fact that, the president had a great meeting in Kenosha, met with the sheriff, with the people there, toured the destruction that's going on, promised aid, promised we'd get this under control. Give us your perspective right now, how this campaign looks, Erin.
The campaign is absolutely heading in the right direction. The president is on stronger footing now than Obama really was in 2012 at this point. You have to think about it. Joe Biden has hidden his basement, and the president has eaten up absolutely all of the oxygen that exists with a strong message of leadership. Joe Biden comes out of his basement to essentially cut a terrible TV ad as he lies to the American people about what's going on. Voters see the chaos in the streets. They see the violent riots. They see the looting. They don't think those are Trump supporters because they're not. They see a radical left wing that is trying to destroy America, and they know the only force to stop that is President Trump.
When you look at his response now to some of this violence, the president's offered to send in the National Guard, as you know, Erin, on multiple occasions, been turned down by the governors. But in a speech in Pittsburgh the other day, by the way, there were 6 people there at a speech in Pittsburgh. And so I was kind of wondering, why he went to Pittsburgh. Sidebar, there were 6 people. But it was almost like he made a veiled threat, because what he said was, if Trump stays as president, or he said, as long as Trump is president, this violence is going to continue. Was that not a veiled threat, Erin?
Oh, that's certainly one way to look at it, but you got to remember, and this is the lie that Joe Biden is telling the American people, that somehow this violence is President Trump's fault, even though every single day the president has said, you have violence in your city, please let the federal government come and help. But he's not a tyrant, so he's not going to force the federal government on any state. And look at Portland. Look at what's happening in Portland. They have had over 90 nights of violence there, including the other evening when the violent mob tried to burn down the mayor's house, the same mayor who has refused federal assistance. Tony Evers, the governor of Wisconsin, at least came to somewhat of his senses after 2 nights of violence and said, okay, we need help from the National Guard. The president surged the National Guard, surged those resources, saved countless lives and businesses, and restored law and order.
So if he gets elected, let me just ask you this. If he gets reelected, Erin, I'm going to just ask you straight out, in your capacity, from what you know, if President Trump gets reelected, and I think he will, and these riots get worse, right, which Biden basically inferred they would, right, because their whole goal is flood the zone with crisis and fear, and you'll get rid of the incumbent. That's basically been their strategy from the beginning. So Trump wins again, and the riots get worse. What will the president do? The governors aren't going to do anything. You think he'll just say, look, I've had it, and send in the National Guard under the Insurrection Act? What do you think?
I certainly can't predict what the president will do when it comes to these specific localities, but he wants to be a federal partner to these states and to these cities and say, listen, as soon as you ask, we are here to deliver. But Democrats really need to remember the role they have played in all of this violence, not only with their lack of condemnation, but the fact that from the very beginning, even Nancy Pelosi has said, I can't believe there aren't uprisings everywhere. Maxine Waters has encouraged Democrats to get in the face of Trump supporters and people who work for the president and make them uncomfortable. Kamala Harris tweeted out a link for people to be able to donate money to bail out violent rioters and looters. This is absolutely at the feet of Democrats. If they actually cared about America's cities, they would stand up and say, enough's enough, we need to have law and order.
Where do we go from here with this narrative? The president yesterday going to Kenosha, I thought it was very successful. Is this part of the campaign now in telling the American people that Trump is the candidate for law and order, Biden is the candidate of mobs, not jobs?
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying this for a long time, and now we've kept up the drumbeat enough that people are paying attention. But yeah, it's communities, not chaos. It's jobs, not mobs. And we have said for months, you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America, and this is only proving that. It just took Joe Biden 3.5 months to come out of the basement to softly say, maybe you shouldn't do that, sort of, kind of, maybe. And President Trump has been out there the entire way to make sure that people know safety and security and law enforcement is how we should handle these type of things in America.
Erin Perinne with us. She is Deputy Press Secretary, Trump Pence 2020. Erin, I want to get your reaction to hear the one thing that Joe Biden said. This is a clip here from Stacey Washington. Care if we could pull this up. Cut to Stacey Washington saying Joe Biden condemned the violence as he was dropping in the polls. So he did nothing for the violence in the end of June and July where he went up in the polls. Now he starts to drop. All of a sudden, he's got a problem with it. Cut to.
In self-interest, Todd. I mean, here he comes. He wasn't planning on coming out and commenting on this. He's had 90 days to come out and tell Antifa to the cameras, I'm the vice presidential candidate, or the presidential candidate, the nominee for the Democrats, and I stand with Nancy Pelosi and AOC and others in leadership in our party in condemning this violence and calling on Antifa and Black Lives Matter and any person who engages in violence to stop. Not only do we not accept what you're doing, but we condemn it. Then he could talk to the mayors directly. He could call them, as he's done in so many other cases, to demean our president. Todd, he could just say, look, I want you to start ordering your prosecutors to charge these people. They're not charging them. The prosecutors in these Democrat-run cities are not charging the individuals, so they're arrested and released immediately on their own recognizance so that they can go out and cause mayhem again. Now that people are dying and he's dropping in the polls, he suddenly stands against violence and is blaming it on the president, who coincidentally is not in charge of anything at the local level.
Reaction.
I think Stacey Washington is 100% correct. Stacey is an absolutely amazing voice, and she hit the nail right on the head there. Now that Joe Biden knows, maybe the American people don't like violent riots and mobs in their streets, and it's affecting my campaign, now I'm going to pretend like I care. It's clear that Joe Biden is just paying lip service to justice, while President Trump has fought every day to provide safety and security and justice for the American people. Joe Biden needed a poll and some poll testing and groups to tell him what he needed to say. President Trump has never wavered. President Trump has always said, we need safety and security. We need to make sure that these violent mobs don't take over our streets. And Joe Biden had to slip in the polls and actually see what leadership looks like from President Trump before he stood up to say anything. And he still hasn't condemned Antifa, still hasn't condemned the violent riots. And it's unbelievable that he thinks that his half-hearted answer does anything to change the narrative.
Well, we've seized the narrative. There's no question. The president going yesterday, this is one other thing that it's very frustrating, Erin, Perinne. I know we're running out of time, but it's very frustrating for us because the fake news legacy media will not pick up on the key things that the president says. I've got one more clip I'm going to play and get your reaction to it that nobody reported on yesterday. Here was the president, Kara, cut 6, saying, we're going to help the people rebuild their businesses in Kenosha. So he's going there saying, we are going to help you get your life and business back by various means. Nowhere reported in the fake news. Cut 6.
We're going to be making a couple of stops. We'll look at some of the damage that was done. We're going to get it fixed up. We're going to help the people rebuild their businesses in Kenosha. And it's just been a great state. Great people, and we're getting it straightened out. The violence has stopped from the time the National Guard came. I mean, literally, when they set their foot on this location, it stopped. So we'll see you over there. We're going to do a roundtable after that, and we'll have plenty to talk about during the day. Thank you very much.
Not picked up by anybody. The president saying, look, I'm going to help you. This is no fault of your own. Your business got burned out. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the The mainstream media, that sad excuse for the press corps, doesn't want to talk about the good work this president does. They've never wanted to talk about it, and he has to stand in front of burned-out buildings to say, I will stand with the American people, as he always has. He has protected jobs. He has protected livelihoods through the coronavirus. He is, of course, going to do the same thing. This is no business's fault of their own, what happened in Kenosha. It falls at the governor's feet. It falls at the mayor's feet, and the president is stepping in to show what true leadership looks like, and it drives the mainstream media crazy.
Hey, Erin, Perinne, I've got to get to cut one here. Get your reaction. That this is my favorite clip of the day. Stand by. Cut one.
Well, I would push back on a couple of notions there. One, it didn't take poll testing or groups to tell the president what he needed to do, which was stand for law and order. It took Joe Biden almost 4 months to come out of his basement to softly rebuke the violence we have seen in these streets. But what you didn't hear from Joe Biden was a rebuke of Antifa, a rebuke of the violence we have seen, or a rebuke of his own staff who paid bail for the rioters in Minneapolis. President Trump has always stood for healing, not hatred. Those are his words from back on May 30th. Justice, not chaos. Just because Joe Biden lies to the American public and the media eats it up doesn't make it factually.
Wow, who was that? Oh, that was you.
I'm nothing if not consistent.
That was my favorite cut of the day. That was a great line. Picked up by radio networks all over the world, Erin. See, you're now an international star.
There we go. Anything to fight for this president.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you for being with us. I know you got other things to do. Always good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us.